Welcome everyone to this week's IPLD sync meeting. It's December the 7th, 2020. And as every week, we go over the stuff that we've worked on the past week and talk about the stuff we work on next, and then discuss any agenda items we might have. I start with myself. I don't have that much of an update. I can also still work on my block storage kind of thing for content address data, and currently mostly Filecoin. And so the exciting news is that it now actually works. So if you go to the repository, you can try it out and play with it, because I've now verified it with, so it was a dump of, so a car file from Filecoin with around 750 gigabytes. And I was able to recreate the file based on my index. And also, like, I have a tooling that kind of like prints out what's in there, and it like sounds correct, because like first it was too good to be true, and it actually was too good to be true, but now it looks sensible. So yeah, so check out the source code, and currently the work goes into a FFI that I've done, and now like Friedel will work on doing a Go binding, so we can try it out with the benchmarking suite for Lotus to see how fast it is compared to other stores. So I'm excited to see the results there. Yeah, but so if anyone's watching this one and is not into Filecoin, it is really about like storing content address data. So it could also be used for IPLD or even IPFS. So that's certainly also something I will look into if we can, how good it will fit those use cases. That's all I have. Next on my list is Danielle.
Cool. So something we started with last week was the big refactors in IPLD prime, as in the backwards incompatible changes. The first one was removing the error returns from the as Boolean, as string, and so on methods. I actually got pretty far in that because we wanted to automate the changes downstream from all the libraries that use IPLD prime. But after talking to Eric for a while, we realized that we actually do want to still keep the error returns around. And I don't know if you want to talk about that later, but I'm not going to get into the details right now. But the gist of it is ADLs. ADLs do want to use the errors, and removing the errors from the ADLs is a bad idea. So now on to the second 0.7 breaking change, which is to use int64 for sizes, because in a bunch of places right now, they're just integers, which is going to be bad on 32-bit. I also worked with Martin quite a bit on CI, because he's sort of leading an effort to make our use of GitHub Actions a little bit more consistent. And that sort of goes in line with what I was thinking of defining what the best practices for CI for Go are. So I'm helping him review and test that stuff. And we're using the IPLD org as a sort of guinea pig for this stuff. I also helped him review a bunch of PRs for Quick Go, which is not really my area, but I happened to notice that he's got a bunch of PRs that have been stuck for weeks, just because the original author of Quick Go is really busy at the moment. And many of the changes were pretty simple Go stuff, so I was still able to review them. So I might continue to do that with the more complex ones if he needs that. It doesn't take a lot of my time. And there was also a proposal, a sort of draft Go proposal that I started 2 weeks ago, stemming from something that I think it was an IPFS developer brought up on Slack about a common bug that they have with type assertions on map indexes. So that's the link on HackMD if anyone wants to look at that. And I still think it's a sort of thorny edge case of Go that makes code confusing. I'm less convinced right now that it should be a change in the Go language. So I think maybe I should propose it as some sort of static analysis check, either in vet or in something like static check. But I feel like both of them would tell me no. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Anyway, and the last thing is that I happened upon how Go IPFS uses channels for iterators, and I'm really not happy about it. So I left them a nice comment explaining how I think they could do it better. Because channels in Go, exposing them in APIs is possible, but it's very thorny, and I think it should be avoided. And the way they're doing it is just to avoid writing some boilerplate, which is, I think, the wrong trade-off to make for Go IPFS, which has, so many users. And that's it for me.
Thanks. Next one is Eric.
So yes, we tried to do some API changes this week, and as Danny mentioned, we backed down when we got closer to it. I think he already summarized it pretty well. We were trying to remove a bunch of errors from the core node interface in the new Go libraries because errors are frustrating. And it turns out that we really can't, primarily for the use case of ADLs. And we even were flirting with the idea of like, well, okay, maybe ADLs could panic and use that as their error handling pathway. But like, no, if we want the overall contract of the node interface to include ADLs can be operated on transparently and you don't need to know that that's what you're doing, then we don't want to have feature detection for this, and we don't want to have different error handling strategies for them. So we are still stuck with returning errors from the core node interface. So we're just going to have to find more ways to build helper libraries and convenience functions around that. So no change. That really honestly shattered my optimism. I hoped that we were going to be able to do that. Nah. Can't be done. All right, moving on. So as we're still preparing to do a couple of other minor API changes, well, more minor than that one, I updated the change log for everything that's happened since the last time we tagged a release in that repo, which has been a while. I found a little bit of unfinished work around CodeGen struct types were not finishing the validation that all required fields are present. So now it does. Will had actually done some work on this for the representations, but we hadn't done it in the type level. So I put it in there as well. Made the error messages nicely tell you missing field name and the serial form as well, if those are different. Spent a bunch of time doing tangential stuff, not quite IPLD, but I got my computer in an odd state where my previous IDE was not working due to Qt linking errors. Computers sometimes. So I tried a new IDE, among many other things in that process. I might be a Go end user now, so I'm kind of getting in the stride of that. Might be a little bit slow on things while I get used to it, but it seems nice. It's very configurable. I'm optimistic. So in Go IPLD Prime, I think we're ready to tag v0.6 probably now. And then after that, we'll start doing the interesting changes. And I'm thinking, unless anybody else has other direct feedback, I'm probably going to keep pushing on some of the new codec work and trying to move towards that refactor of the linking API that's been kind of a long-term goal, and try to make some progress on that the rest of the week. And I'm kind of hoping that's going to be a January thing, but we'll see. I'm probably going to want to make sure that we do things right and get lots of benchmarks in this and stuff. So like the timing is TBD. That's it. Oh, and I'm starting to review Rod's cool new stuff, but haven't got much yet. So sorry, I'm slow.
Thanks. Next is Rod.
So just minor stuff from me, and had a tiny bit of time off. So mostly Go, actually, reflecting back on the week. Lots of little maintaining things, helping fix bugs in Go CID and other places related to IPFS, participating in discussions with Filecoin actors, people about HAMPs and AMPs, algorithms and data layouts and stuff. So one interesting thing bubbling out of that for awareness is that the actors version 3 will have the kinded union implemented and the keyed union removed, which is nice because it'll save, I think I worked it out as 96 bytes per full node on the HAMT, and gets rid of the only place where maps are used in DAGSIB or in Filecoin. but that brings up other questions, which we'll get to later in the meeting about ADLs, because there's now 2 different formats of HANTs. There's also 2 different formats of AMTs, so similar sort of questions. And yeah, DAG-PB, I've cleaned up work that I'd been working on for way too long. So this DAG-PB and Go stuff, I cleaned that up with the IPLD front end, Go IPLD Prime front end, and it works as a codec. I'm not super happy with it. It does work, but it's I'm thinking about rearranging the guts of it, just to make it a bit more pleasant, because it's just a bit overcomplicated in the way it tries to build its internal abstractions. But it's there, and read and write DAG-PB. That's it for me, I think.
Thanks. Next one is Peter.
Right. Hi guys. So not much from me. On the IPLD side, we are even closer to the Modro becoming a thing finally. Have some test deals that went through correctly. People are getting their power increased, so things are working. More work on trying to figure out exactly how we want to. How I want to store the chain in a way that will allow basically this thing to grow to at least 100 terabytes without rearranging anything. I think I have the very final schema now in place that captures everything that we need from multiple work streams. So both being able to pull a bundle of blocks, so basically have like a mini selector with a fixed depth of sorts directly implemented on a database level, being able to navigate just the chain itself without getting into the weeds of status and so on and so forth, being able to do actual chain exports as well, almost directly from the database. So all of this is finally clicking nicely, and just need to wire in some caches correctly, and hopefully this will be the production version of that. Will, I did drop a link to the preliminary schema in Phil in the analysis channel, so it's posted there as well. And yeah, other than that, I've been busy with got into a number of work streams around base fee spiking and stuff like that, messaging around that, and that's taking an obscene amount of time. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have, and I have an agenda item for later.
Yeah, thanks. Next one is Will.
I cleaned up the GraphQL stuff that's in a repo in IPLD.org. I should talk with Martin and Dan about getting all of these fancy GitHub actions and workflow checks enabled on that repo. I saw the .github repo, and I guess I need to PR there to have it do a action to submit PRs to my repo. So I will work through that, figuring out testing strategies for that. Other than that, front end stuff, keeping the service up, thinking a little bit. I started on a design doc around how we're dealing with messaging, the stuff Peter's been doing. The infra side people are all very excited for this to exist. So a lot of trying to run interference to have us not build other things while we wait for it. Yeah.
Thanks. I can see that Chris doesn't have an update, so thanks for letting me know. And so we come to the agenda items. First one is Go Ahead ADL question. Oh, several questions. Yeah. Whoever posted it, please tell me more.
This one's Daniel and me posing questions for the group, and I think Will is in a good position to help answer these questions. So we've now got, so we're focusing on the HAMT, but the same questions go for the AMT if we get there. Daniel's building an ADL for Go IPLD Prime. We now have 2 versions of the HAMT for Filecoin. And these questions were just about the value of supporting all the versions of the Filecoin data layout or aiming for latest one. Like if we were to, like there's 2 goals here. There's the, showing up to actors, people, and saying, hey, you should be able to use IPLD Prime in your work, and here's a good way. ADLs fix all of these issues with the way that you're navigating the tree, so let's just plop this in place and it works. And then the other one is being able to read old data. And so we'd just like to have a discussion about the value of these different things and trying to get a mental mapping for the value. That's what that's about.
So, I mean, from my perspective, the state roots are versioned. So it's easy for me to have different schema types on those different state root things, which are keyed off of the epoch. So using the current HAMT implementation for things now, and then only switching to the ADL HAMT when the transition to Actors v3 happens. So I don't think for the analysis side workload, there's really going to be any particular objection to them only supporting the new style HAMTs. It's maybe my short version of this. Is that a good thing to hear?
I think so, at least from my side, because I think supporting 2 versions of this, supporting 2 schemas at once, if they only have minimal differences, is reasonable in terms of it's still mostly being a single ADL, or at least sharing a lot of the code. But if there's 3 versions where the oldest one has significant changes, then it's significantly more difficult, I think. Okay, fair enough. That's helpful.
I have a question about, because like I don't fully understand what we are talking about. So does it basically mean that you have different code bases for different versions of the HAMTs? Is this the question, basically? Okay.
They have different code bases for the different versions of actors. So and you can look in Lotus and you can see it actually links to different branches on specs actors. So when you get to a certain point in the chain, you're using an entirely different code base to navigate it.
Okay.
It's going to get out of hand one day. It's going to be like, how many versions do we have and how many different code bases, and then making sure all those code bases still work.
It is already out of hand. So
I just even things like there's a new version of Go and we need to fix all of the old stuff to compile on the new version of Go. Like, yeah. So there is also this other thing in the HAMT where the Filecoin HAMT uses big int for its bit field. And that's not something that we do or want to support for a generic HAMT. I tried to get that fixed before mainnet, but it was just too late. And then there was a discussion about doing it for v3, but the benefits are just not big enough to bother in Filecoin. So we're sort of stuck with this quirky bit field in the Filecoin HAMT that we don't want to support for our generic HAMT. So there's questions about divergence, about multiple code bases, and yeah. So I think something for Daniel and the guidance, the helpful guidance would be more about what is the most useful target for development here. Is it developing an ADL that works on specs actors v3 that can be used to look at the current chain and possibly offer it to the specs actors team as a drop-in replacement? Or is it to work on something better that is more generic that we could offer them for a v4? Or is it to work on older stuff, an older version so we can expect older work? It's a question of the biggest value for work that I don't have a good answer to.
I mean, I can say my sense is that third one is not the one where the value is. Right. That from my perspective, as soon as we get a real IPLD node compatible HAMT as the thing that's being used as the HAMT, that makes my life easier and means that we can then do IPLD style traversals and things like that, and that gets us a bunch of benefit in that then subsequent processing. As soon as we can start meeting those interfaces, we don't have to think about subsequent versioning quite as bad, or it becomes a little less bad, right? Which is, if I can still path through the HAMT and it's got that ADL level, that's great. And if it's not fully optimized and we've had to make some compromises and we fix those with a different version later, as long as I can still path through it, works the same, we've saved ourselves having to rewrite analysis code. So I think this is one where I would say the good rather than perfect and get it in is, from my perspective, the highest value.
I also have a sense that that the specs actors team are not going to take a upgrade within a major version to anything major, even if it was the same format. I think my understanding of the way they're working is, once they commit to a version and it gets rolled out, that code base is really just in maintenance. Things get fixed, but otherwise they don't tend to try and touch it very much because of all these gas calculations and the rest of it. So while developing an ADL for the current version of it makes sense, I don't think we should go in with the expectation that they're going to replace their current version with an ADL and IPLD prime. It's more likely something's going to happen in a major version upgrade. So I don't know what that means. I mean, that does mean that there's scope there for actually changing the format and the schema, but it doesn't mean that we should. So yeah.
I mean, at the same time, even if it is a major version upgrade, the wire data format may well be compatible, and that is nicer when they can do upgrades that maintain that. So.
And we did pull in a discussion about changing the bit field. I pulled in the what's his name from ChainSafe, who's doing the Rust implementation, just because you have these alternative implementations out there, and I'm writing code now to read the chain in JavaScript, and having it change constantly is annoying. So minimal change is good. And yeah. So my hunch is the best value would be.
My other thought on the bit field specifically is, the reality is, if you are doing any sort of chain analysis in whatever language, you have re-implemented the Go bit field because it appears not just there, but in plenty of places. So you've already got one of these, and so it's not too much of a pain to use it there.
Yeah, that was my point there as well, except for the fact that this is in this particular place, it's used in a very novel way, accessing individual bits of it. So you actually need to implement even more of the Go bit field than you do just to read and write them. But yes, that's yeah. When I was doing the schemas for the chain, I didn't realize in the beginning how much big int was used, and it's used everywhere. So if you're writing code for the Filecoin chain in any other language, you're in the source code of big int, figuring out what it's doing. So my hunch is that the best bang for buck would be working on the specs actors v3 format, which is the kinded union, and then adding in anything else after that.
Yep, I agree. So essentially just supporting that schema initially, and once it's working well, I can think about what to do to support the proper new schema some way, be it like a separate package or whatever it is. Just so that I understand, is this v3 of actors the next version, or is it the current version?
Yeah, it's the next version. Current is v2. Yeah, so v2 has the keyed union. v3 will have the kinded union. I don't know the timing. I think it's January will be rolled out, but it's merged now in that HAMT, so it will be making its way into all their test code and everything. So
even though v3 is the next one, it's probably a little too late to suggest replacing the implementation at this point.
Yep.
Gotcha. I think that answers all my questions about the HAMT. I don't know if you had anything else, Rod?
No, I might put it to. I think I'm probably talking to Wyatt again this week, so I might bring it up with him. But we've got this conflict here, conflict of approaches where they're very much a product team, and we're not, and so we can't, like, their goals are very short term. They're very, very rigid because they need to get these things out in particular timeframes, and so we're going to have trouble coming to them with anything where yeah. So V3 is pretty much locked in stone in terms of their planning for code. So I don't think we should bother trying to get anything in that, but it would be worth discussing with them the steps to getting IPLD Prime into some of these places for a V4.
A question on things being plugged in. I thought the FIP for the AMT changes just went out like today.
For the HAMT or the AMT? There was a HAMT one.
Okay, this is what I might misremember. Okay, yeah, and this is probably for V4, right? That's not for V3.
There probably, I don't know if there was, I assume there was a FIP for the AMT because it changes bit width too, but the HAMT one got merged, but it got merged at the same time that all the code got merged. So all that's all done. So
right, okay, yeah, never mind. I'm crossing my wires. Never mind.
Okay, then we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is about DID stuff.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not sure who changed the the topic. It's not who changed the question. It's not specifically about DIDs. It's basically in general, collabs are coming to Eva and are asking her for what's our guidance as protocol labs for building more advanced stuff. And whether there is some set of schemas or anything like this that we can link people to at this point, if anything exists. Not specifically for DIDs. DIDs was only one of the examples. I don't know the answer to this either, so I know Rod, Eric, that would be for you guys, I guess.
Yeah, we've got to. I assume that this is coming from Eva, who's doing grant stuff.
Correct.
Has got very good connectivity with the ecosystem, but this is very language dependent, unfortunately. If you're doing stuff in Go, then our advice is very much to push people towards IPLD Prime.
Her question is on a more basic level, not in terms of like, how do I design something for my language, but how do we get people to basically build the Merkle forest by just applying a common set of things. So it's explicitly not language dependent, but more like, what should people be doing so that others can interoperate with them at a later date?
We need more docs work, I guess. Surprise. I think we probably have some documentation for this that is decent, but it's probably not discoverable. Like, I think there's the primer document that I wrote around the time that Daniel was joining us, I think is still really good. And we did a bunch of editing work on that as he joined us also, which was really useful. And we haven't landed that anywhere, or I'll blame myself. I have not pushed that into either our docs or our specs repo, in part because I can't figure out which repo it should go in. We should get more of those things out there and make sure that they're actually reachable. If we have people that are giving us good feedback about which docs they're not finding, we should really thank them for that feedback and make sure that we pay attention to it, and then go back and ask them if they can find that document after we update some links, because we should make sure these things are discoverable from like IPLD.io and clicking 3 times max. Right now, they're probably somewhere, but it sure isn't there, and it sure isn't there in that number of clicks.
So is this question about, so the last part of the question there makes me think this is about what are the off-the-shelf components for data structures that I can take and not have to build from scratch? Is that what it's about? These.
Kinda, yeah. It's like, again, like the question is coming through, multiple layers, so it's difficult to get an exact answer. However, the meeting we're going to have tomorrow, probably some of this will come up with the Ethereum, well, not with the Ethereum people, but
Vulcanized.
Vulcanized, thank you. Yes, they will probably have something similar in terms of need, but yeah, like stuff like DIDs are very general because you want to apply them to a wide range of things. So that's why they were brought up as one example. Like, yeah. My understanding was the question almost was like, how come you guys don't have a schema for this yet? Kind of was
yeah. I think my answer to this would be, I still think there's a language dependent thing here, because there's a mismatch in maturity where the answer is different depending on what language you're doing things in, because we can give you off the shelf things in Go. We can show you some schema work. I think maybe the best answer is to say, when people have these kinds of questions, send them to us and let's have a discussion, because we need to understand the gaps better so that we can know what to fill. Because this kind of question gets at, why don't we have that answer? And it seems like something that we kind of do have answers for, but they're not organized enough, obviously, to be able to just say, here it is. So maybe if whenever these things comes up, loop us in. I think an email is probably the easiest way to do it. Maybe just get one or two of us in email, and then we'll, like, I did this recently with some blockchain people, and that ended in some really fruitful discussions with Dean and some other people about some various IPFS related things. But yeah, I think, Brent, send them to us. Let's have a discussion, and then we can understand requirements and what we're missing, and then work on those things.
It's a start. Awesome. I will relay. Well, I'll just point the recording to you. So.
Okay. So let's see. I don't see any other items on the agenda. Does anyone have anything else? No? Then thanks everyone for attending and watching, and see you all next week again. Goodbye.